What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Mayrand podcast. Today, my guest is Jason Levinthal. For those of you who don't know who Jason is, he is a Freeski pioneer and an industry legend. He is the founder of Line Skis, Full Tilt Boots, J Skis, and an X Games medalist at the first ever ski slopestyle back in '97. We talked skiing in the East Coast, the business life in skiing, and a bunch of other stuff. It was really interesting talking to Jason, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's go. Mr. Jason Levinthal, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. I've talked to a couple legends as of now, a couple of skiers, but you're the first guy from inside the industry that I'm getting to talk to.
All right.
And I was really curious to have this discussion because you're a bit older than me. I'm guessing you're from the 70s, right?
My birthday is 72, so yeah. When you get older, you don't think of yourself as any older than the people you're skiing with.
Yeah.
Kind of throws you for a loop when you.
That's what's fun about skiing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're a 72 model and I'm a 92 model.
Yeah, man. I was only a couple of years before I started Line. Yep.
So that's something that I wanted to talk to you about because you've been involved in the ski industry for a long time. You founded Line, you founded Full Tilt, and recently J Skis. And you've talked about this on a lot of platforms, but basically you were a skier and a snowboarder.
Yeah.
Growing up. When I was young, that was in the 90s. I remember asking, my parents put me onto skis, but I remember asking them every year to get a snowboard. Not because I saw anything, but that was just the pop culture of snowboard was the cool thing.
It was the only cool thing on the hill. It was the only thing that you could do cool stuff with on the hill, actually. Yeah, that's why.
So what made you mix ski and snowboarding and not just move to snowboarding? Or?
Well, there was... Believe it or not, there was 300 snowboard brands at the time in the mid 90s. That's when I started Line in 95. And so no one needed another snowboard brand, but I still love skiing. I would still spend half my day. If I went to Stratton's, I'd snowboard, and half the day I'd ski because I could do a lot of fun things on my snowboard I couldn't do on my skis. But the fact is, standing forward down the hill, it just felt way more natural to me. And at the end of that day, I just always asked myself, why the hell couldn't I have done what I was doing on my snowboard? And it was just kind of a little bit just strange and frustrating, but nothing I really did anything about until I went to college and then had an opportunity to do a project. We could build anything we wanted. And I just, like any kid today that builds their own skis, like that's what I did. It just happened to be a twin tip ski. And I just followed all the snowboard guys because they were in every town had someone making snowboards. They were just building them everywhere in their garages and stuff. And I just kind of learned from the snowboard, the garage snowboard world, how to make a ski.
And what gave you your entrepreneurial spirit? Like, was it in your family? Was it people you were around, or was it just in you?
So I guess my two things about me that since I was a little kid is creative, and I like making things. You know, my dad was an art teacher, my mom was a math teacher, middle school. So I have that artistic sense, and then I have a lot of mechanical sense. I think from my mom's side, that just seemed like it seemed natural to just want to make something.
And one thing that I've always been like. I always admired what you've done is that there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit in the ski community, but it seems that there's a lot of it for simpler products, kind of like clothing. Mm-hmm. Like it's easy to start a company and put a logo on a hoodie and start a company, but building skis seems like a huge hassle.
Yeah, it is a huge hassle. That's perfectly put, man. And I wish more people realized that before they dropped in on it. I mean, there's two ways to go about making skis. Like one, it's just a cool thing to do. It's an art project, you know, and that's awesome. Like everyone should try making a ski. Go for it. Why not? It's only when you decide that you want to turn it into a business that it gets really a hassle, like you're describing. It's gnarly because there's an entire process of building the ski That's one piece. Then there's the process of first you got to design a good ski, and that just takes years. Like you have to. It's just like making a cake. Every time you make it, you put a little more sugar, a little less sugar, a little more flour, and then you see how that tastes and you check it. So think about for a ski, what it takes to do that equivalent. You know, it's not 20 minutes in the oven. It's like you got to go re-engineer it, change the materials, adjust the geometry. There's so many variables. It's you look at a ski, it's a simple object. So really the performance comes in like, less than a millimeter of differences along the shape, the side cut, the flex pattern, the tip shape. Every little piece makes a huge difference. So like the cake example, I mean, there's just thousands of variations, and you've got to at least try, I don't know, 50, maybe 100 to get kind of good at it. And it takes time. It takes multiple seasons to do that. So it just takes years to know how to design a good ski, to learn that. It would take years to be able to build, like produce skis efficiently and high quality. And that's before you even go try to freaking sell the thing, right? Like you got to have a reason why people were buying them from you and it's not, instead of someone else. So there's like so many pieces that I would just say, build them for the fun of it, go for it. Build it as a business. You better put a lot of thought if you really want to go down that road. And I didn't put any thought into it. I just dropped in, and sometimes that's good. Sometimes like they say, ignorance is bliss. Like not knowing what you're actually about to drop into is a good thing, or you never would have tried. And it's the same thing with hitting a jump, dropping into a line or chute that you've never been in. You're like, oh, I think I could do that. You get through it and you're like, holy shit. Like I never would have tried it. But now that I did, I learned something from it. You know what I mean? Or if you take a fall, which you probably will, it was worth it because you took the fall. You're like, okay, that's the worst that can happen. I'm going to get back up. I'm going to try it different. And I think, your question about being an entrepreneur, there's one thing that makes an entrepreneur, and that's like persistence, like never giving up. Like you're not smarter. You're not, there's not more ingenuity. It's the fact that you just continued trying regardless of how many times you fail. And that's the same with every athlete that skis. And that's why skiing for me is 100% the same in the way that I perceive it and the reasons I like to take the risks I do as skiing. It's a form of skiing in business because you got to drop into things you never done. You got to take risks that you don't know what could come of it. You could break your back and not be able to walk again. And, if you hit a jump skiing, and you could break your business, and go bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
But more times than not, you just learn, progress, get back up, hike up to the top of the rail, drop in again, until you can get it. And that's whoever can do that the longest usually learns the most, right?
Yeah, a really interesting thing that you said is about persistence.
Yeah.
It makes me think of, the skateboarder Rodney Mullen.
Yeah.
I saw a TED talk of him where he was talking about that and how skateboarders had a different mindset in general in life because they were used to falling and getting back up.
Yeah.
Like for normal people, like you're not like a skateboarder would go hit a rail and maybe fall 200 times before getting it. And it's kind of the same thing with skiers where I've talked to Nick Martini on the podcast about ski filmmaking, where you're used to going in the streets at minus 40 Celsius and having a struggle. And then when he goes on commercial shoots, then he has a whole different mindset. He's just like, yeah, let's get this done. I don't care if lunch is late. Like, let's get this thing going.
Yeah, I've seen his stuff too. I think about how they're doing all those football videos, ads from Nike and stuff. It's insane. And I was like, first I was like, oh my God, like that's incredible that they progressed from freaking skiing, shoveling snow on a rail and saying, go slide it, I'm going to shoot you, to like, I mean, huge, like Hollywood level and beyond stuff. And I came to that same conclusion that if you can do what you do in skiing and make something look good, you can do it anywhere. Everywhere else is easy. Like he's probably getting served hors d'oeuvres, there. Freaking, they got a crew of like 30 people, wait, you know what I mean, by their side, ready to go. And, you're out in the streets trying to avoid getting arrested. It's like, wow, you make it like an amazing video. So it's pretty rad to see photographers, videographers, graphic designers, anyone in any aspect of business, sales, marketing, go from the ski industry outside of it. And they usually find a similar situation where it's like, if you can survive in skiing, you can do well anywhere.
Yeah, and I like your comparison that you did for entrepreneurship when you talked about just doing it, like not doing anything special, just going out there and doing it. And that's something that I've heard you say on other platforms, is that you did a comparison with dropping into a jump skiing.
Yeah.
Like you can't go half speed. You
Right.
need to go all in or it's going to hurt. And I think that's something that skiers are used to, and that it's a really good comparison because it's something that applies to every skier. Like we need to go all in. You're not going to land your double cork or, any other kind of tricks if you don't go all in. And that's something that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, totally. And things like that in skiing apply up and down all day long in business and being an entrepreneur. And the reason people do the clothing thing is because, like all those things I just described were challenges of running a ski business, because you can jump into the clothing. People will make clothing. I mean, shit, you can start a website, Shopify site, and use Teespring, and they'll build the shirt as you sell it, one at a time. And I think that's awesome. Like I mean, shit, if that existed when I started, I could have gotten into any number of things, and those brands stand for something, and they bring flavor to the sport just as much as a ski brand. Like a lot of people like, oh, ski company, that's what I want to do. I want to start making skis. It's like, there's a million places you could enter and help the ski business, ski industry, not ski as in a ski you ski on, but like, from real estate to like, lodges and just, chairlifts and snowmaking and transportation, travel, like marketing, all of that, selling all of that. Like there's an accountant that works in the ski business, you know what I mean? And they're not physically making a ski, and they're influencing what these brands do and progressing the sport just as much. So anyone listening that's just like loves skiing and thinks I got to make a ski to get in the ski business, that's not true. Just do what you love and you'll be the best at it because you're the most passionate about it. And that job, I guarantee, exists relating to
it's interesting what you say about businesses in the broader scheme of things in the ski industry. You're from Vermont, or at least you live in Vermont right now. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on what happened with J-Peak in the last 10 years? With it used to be, as a Montrealer who used to go there in powder days, it seems like it really went from a kind of family-owned, it seemed, or like really small resorts, to big-time companies getting in, construction of hotels and indoor pools and indoor,
Wait, I thought you needed a water park to have a ski resort. That's a ski mountain to go ski.
If you want to do some urban water park.
The worst part about I mean, nothing bad about J Peak, but the worst part for me when I had a kid and he was little and we went to J Peak and I was so hyped to like ski like crazy that day. After 2 runs, he's like, "Can we go to the water park now?" Like he was all about it. I was like, "Dude, I just spent like hundreds of dollars to come here to go skiing." Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, here's the double-edged sword of any ski mountain is that, hey, we love rolling up and having no one in the lift line. Like I'm a huge advocate. I hate lift lines, of course, ever since the high-speed chair. It's like you haven't really had them. But the fact is, if it's that empty, that resort isn't going to be able to stay in business. You know what I mean? If every day there's a powder day, it doesn't get tracked out, then like there are not enough people to support it. So it's like some of these mountains would have gone out of business if they weren't bought by, like Vail Resorts, for example. So it's a good thing, but it also, in a selfish way, feels like a bad thing because now you go to the mountain and it's like Disneyland, and everyone's coming there from everywhere. But like more people skiing, that's a good thing too, because like you're not going to have magazines or websites or all the things we love about skiing. All the other supporting aspects won't exist. There won't even be a shuttle from the airport to the mountain eventually if there's not enough people taking it. So you got to have enough business, but you also no one wants to be crowded. So what are you going to do?
One thing that I noticed, that I thought of concerning J-Peak was that it was a good business decision to bring the whole family, because if you're just a casual skier, you're not gonna enjoy it that much. So if the whole family is not all like great skiers, it's good to have them like hang out at the spot.
That's why they got the villages, man, the ice skating rinks. And my kid brings his ice skates and my wife's into the ice skates. It's just like more stuff to do. It's all good. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just an evolution. There'll always be mountains that are just purely you roll up in the parking lot, put your boots on and get on the lift. You know, there's those two. And I hope those can stay in business. And what's pretty rad is like Cochrane's here, a small mountain that legendary for their family of racers. Like, I mean, Olympic racers coming out this tiny little hill. Now it's actually a not for profit. It's, you know, it's not owned by anyone. You know, so I think that could be an opportunity too for some of the smaller mountains is, you know, donations. And
Is that what you call like a cooperative?
yeah, it's like, you know, it's the type of thing where people donate and businesses donate, and, you know, they have night skiing and everything, but it's a rope tow, you know, and it's always been that way. So I think there's a place for both, you know.
And now it's time for a first sponsor break. Treefort Lifestyles is a company based out of Oregon. They've been involved in the ski industry since their inception in 2011 when they made their first pair of suspenders for skiing. They produce some of the nicest accessories you can find out there for your adventure activities, whether you're going skiing, hiking, or traveling. Plus, I've heard their famous suspenders are making a comeback this winter. Go check them out at treefortlifestyles.com and use code Mayrand at checkout to get 15% off your order. Support companies that support skiing. Support Treefort Lifestyles. I wanted you to teach me a bit of history. I've grown up knowing of snowblades, as we call them in Quebec. I know the official term is ski boards.
Yeah. Depends what time period you're from. Yeah.
Yeah. You're kind of the inventor of those, right?
I was like, so me and some other people that you don't know about started different brands around the same time, not knowing each other were doing it. Yeah. I mean, the ski board thing. So, I mean, first off, it's just skiing, literally. Like, those are just skis. They're just shorter. And at the time, the only skis that existed, this is in 95 when I started. Like, to put in perspective, like Armada Forefront, that was like the early 2000s, you know. Solomon 1080 was like 2000. So here I am in 1995, and there's just these race skis that are really pointy in the tip, square in the tail, skinny, straight, no side cut, stiff as hell. 190s to 205 length. So you can do a spread eagle, a daffy, and a 360 on them. You can ski bumps, but that's about it. That's why snowboarding was blowing up. So there was things like the Bigfoot, you know, that, you know, like the foot shaped thing that under your boot. Yeah. And they were kind of like toys. And that's where, like I said, I want to do what I can do on my snowboard, on my skis. And I was a rollerblader. You know, a lot of people were inline skating. They called it aggressive skating, but like, you know, hitting jumps and dropping stairs and stuff and sliding rails on skates. And I thought, geez, like, that's kind of the same as snowboarding. That's the closest thing to snowboarding and skiing. So anyway, I just made short twin tip skis.
And that became kind of an insult at some point to rail skiers of saying like, oh, you guys are just inline skaters.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you're having fun, who cares? Like, that's how I've always been. So, you know.
But yeah, my question regarding ski boards is that it kind of got a lot of hype, and it didn't have a long life as a product. Like, businesses stopped making them kind of quickly, but it's something that had a really big impact. Like, if you ask a lot of people know what those are, and you still see them. Some people like skiing them in the springtime. Like, do you think it could have had a longer run as a product? Like, do you think there was a potential for it to be a stable thing in the market?
Yeah, man. So that's a good question. Like, no, yeah, this is a good question. It's because it evolved that it went away. At the time, we saw it as not a ski and not a snowboard because it truly wasn't. But like, I knew there was potential to evolve it into a longer ski. And what we ended up doing is just doing that, evolving it. Like, everyone that was an athlete they just started getting on longer skis. They were like, I could go faster. I could float in powder. I can do all the same things. but it bought us 5 years to evolve a longer ski. We could have done it overnight, but honestly, I was building so many of them and I was just in like an oversized garage. I didn't have time to like create that long ski. I had a mold sitting there on the floor for like years of like a 164 twin tip. I mean, there's there's lots to talk about there, but the thing is, it wasn't its own sport. And then, by the way, here's skiing doing its own evolution. It was evolving skiing. Skiing was like nothing. Skiboarding was evolving. And then finally it was like, and now we're going to apply all of this to a ski and we're on. And it was like, there was no one left to ride the skiboard. Now there actually were people left, but they were very, very mainstream skiers, that like, and I still think there's an awesome place for that, for someone that's just like, oh, look, honey, it snowed outside. Like we should go to the mountain, like those people should get on a skiboard because it's so easy and fun and it doesn't take a lot. But there's also, I mean, shit, we sold hundreds of them the last couple of years. I brought it back kind of like, it was like funny and fun and just like something. It's like a snow skate, right? It's just like, it's not like you're going to go win the X Games on a snow skate. You're not going to like have the best power run of your life. It's just like something else to do on the snow. It's the same as like putting a 2x4 and a piece of plywood to sit on a single ski, a sit ski. They have that at Bolton here, the mountain I go to locally. I mean, guys with just snow boots, like going down the hill, sitting on one ski, and so there's a place for everything, man. Like everything doesn't have to be the most progressive X Games event, raddest, like pro sponsored, blah, 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 blah. But because it evolved, it kind of left nothing behind. And I'm actually bringing it back. I brought it back and we sold hundreds of them. People loved them. There was two types of people. I go to the mountain. Me and my kid would go goof around on them, if it's a boring night. And people would say, oh my God, I can't believe you're riding those again. Like who knew the story. Then there were people that were like, what are those? Those look cool. Where do you get them? How much are they? Is it easy? Is it fun? Like, so there's like it's been 20 years, man. Like 95, I mean, it's been 25 years. They kind of died out in the early 2000s. And there's kind of a known thing. Every 20 years, you can bring anything back. I mean, anything that was cool 20 years ago, you can bring it back. It's new.
Yeah. Teens nowadays are dressing like the Backstreet Boys 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to bring it back. I already brought it back, but in the next year or so, I'm going to bring it back like legit. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that because, as you said, it's something really fun. Like through the years, we've seen edits of Enric Arlo and Will Wesson and a lot of skiers that take the time to take a day off and say, okay, today it will be fun, and fun equals going on with the smaller skis.
Yeah. And those guys were actually looked up to, like Will was a fan of, we were skiing and he was coming to like our camp, our ski board camp, like me and Mike Nick back in the day. So a lot of those guys that are pro now, that was what kind of triggered their interest in realizing they could take it to this level, So it all comes around.
Yeah. A thing that I learned today doing my little research is that, a lot of times with companies, it works with some claims of like, hey, we have the gold Olympic skier and things like that. You're an X Games medalist and the first ever slopestyle at X Games.
Yeah. But dude, it was like a beginner park back then. Like, so I did on that slope style. I did a 540 on like the booter, the big booter, which was literally like 25 feet long. I mean, it wasn't even like a gap table. It was like the old school, like square table. And I did a 5 that was so sketchy and ugly. And Mike did a 9 or switch 9. He got gold. I got bronze. And dude, there was like one straight rail. There was like, there's video somewhere. It was pretty straightforward, but it was cool. Like that was the only time I could ever be a pro.
Is there any footage of that online?
Yeah. I think there is. I have a bunch of VHS tapes. I gotta digitize and get it out there big time. Yeah,
that would be crazy.
It was basic, like super basic, but people love hearing that. And hey, it was the first. It was Solomon who convinced the X Games to put skiing in it in any capacity because they were selling the ski blades they came out with that year, a
Mm-hmm.
couple of years after I had my ski boards. And Salomon was a sponsor of the X Games, like their biggest sponsor. And they were just like, put this in. And it was like the minute that hit TV, like our phones just started ringing. Like no one gave a shit about ski boards going backwards on skis. I mean, everyone that saw me and Mike at the hill, we were like, had to figure out how to ski backwards. Like no one was skiing backwards except for by mistake. And like, people would just ask me all day, like, I don't get it. Why do you want to ski backwards? Like, and I just said, well, I do on my snowboard, my skateboard, my inline skates, my wakeboard. Like, why wouldn't I? And
Mm-hmm.
that was the whole thing. It wasn't anything genius. It was just the fact that like no one thought that there wasn't a point to it, you know, from most people's perspective. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I was curious if I were to show you to Jason in '97 a run of the slopestyle run at X Games 20 years down the road in 2020. What do you think your reaction would have been?
Oh, to see it today,
Yeah,
back
to
then.
see it back then, the runs from today.
So I definitely remember thinking, because you got to remember, like people were just like to the point where why are you making a ski with a tail on it? Like it was that weird. And I wasn't the only one doing it either. Like, you know, there was a crew like Josh Frazier and Griffin Cummings, who Pollard, you know, looked up to out at Hood. They were like bolting on tails to their skis. They're like regular square tailed skis. So they were actually ahead of me, but they just, what I really did was like bring it to market and it stayed, but there were other people doing similar things. So I get a lot of credit, but I certainly did not invent the twin tip ski, but I was one of the first to bring it to market, you know, and keep it going. But I remember back then thinking, like we were progressing. Like we go to the hill and it's just like new tricks, like constantly. There was like nothing had been done. We were figuring out how to ski backwards, like I was saying. Like, do I look over the shoulder and keep my skis straight? Do I like the scissor thing, looking over his shoulder? That took me and Mike like 3 days to figure out, like full days of like, no, I think it's this way. I think it's that way. So like all those new tricks, we were like, man, someday. We were always saying like someday. And I remember I was at Super Park at Mammoth with Powder Magazine, and I saw and Candide hit and Tanner, but it was like Candide hit this humongous hip, like had to be 100-foot long hip. No one had ever hit it end to end like that. And him and C.R. Johnson actually were doing like cork 9 or something. Now it was like, I remember just staying on the side watching that, just being like, done. Like mission accomplished. It's over now. It's gone now. It's going to be just off. That was the craziest shit I could have thought of. And now that he just did that, I'm like, I don't even know. Like, it's just going to go through. You won't even be able to comprehend what's going to be done next, you know? So that I would have just been like, I wouldn't have been able to believe it. Simple as that. Because the biggest I thought of was like, yeah, people be throwing like Misty Sevens and like rodeos and stuff of like 30, 40-foot jumps. So to see someone throw something like that on a 100-foot freaking jump, dude, and land backwards, that was like, oh my God. Like, you know, like then you get into the powder, then Pollard started landing backwards in powder. Like I was saying you could land backwards in powder. I was, you know, but we didn't, it wasn't really happening to that extent. You know, like Pollard was landing backwards in powder. So he was doing that so much and falling so much that MSP got pissed at him and didn't want to film anymore. Cause they were like, I was sponsoring the movie and they're like, we're wasting so much money because it was film instead of digital. And like they're burning film and developing film of just Eric landing backwards and exploding. But like he finally figured it out, you know, and he's hitting like 30-foot, 40-foot drops backwards.
Okay, they were pissed because he wasn't landing. I thought it was because landing switch wasn't cool to them, but
they also kind of thought that. I think there was a little undertone of just like, this isn't what a ski movie is. Like you're supposed to just like charge like 100 miles an hour down a face, right?
Yeah.
And so there was some of that where like he's bringing this kind of jib style, and that's why he ended up creating Nimbus, where he made his own movies, because he's just like, I just want to do this type of skiing, you know? And yeah. And no, nothing bad about MSP. You know, they had their position and their mission, and
yeah, there's always a evolution in kind of the non-written rules about
Yeah.
something. Like for the early adopters of urban, like Frank Raymond, he would have a lot of rules, like your kicker must not be
Oh,
that
yeah.
ratio versus the rail. And he, if he could write a book about like urban rules, sorry. And it seems like now it kind of went away a bit, like everyone's kind of just having fun doing it and like not taking themselves as seriously.
Right. Right. No, I think about that when I see Urban, and I'm just like, God, yeah, he built the kicker so high, he could have just like walked onto the thing, like because
Yeah.
there was like when snowboarding was, like when forum snowboards, and that's the thing. I was always super aware of snowboarding, so like that's the world I was following. I wasn't following skiing. I didn't know who like JF Kusan was and all those guys before they were like super famous. Like I was following snowboarding, and then I'd bring that into skiing and only had athletes that got it. Like, Mike Nix, Skogan Sprang, Chris Osnes, like Mike LaRoche, got Dash Long that were like rotating without crossing their skis. They always grabbed. It was slow off axis rotations. It was snowboarding. Like skiing at the time initially, like the Canadian Air Force, no diss on them, but they were bringing moguls to this. They were always crossing their skis, not always grabbing, wasn't slow rotations. It was like spin to win, which we were just like, it doesn't matter how many rotations you do if it's ugly, like, if you're just spinning to win like a gymnast, right? So there was almost, in early days, it was like two sides. It was like two different mindsets of what skiing should be or what was cool, because everyone was progressing it. And the one side that like my crew was on for line was just style, just slow rotation, style, off axis. The other side was how many spins can you get,
Mm-hmm. Well, it's cool to have your own perspective on that side. Like, as you said, there's no diss intended, but it's cool to have your different point of view from that era.
Yeah. And it's the same with the rail thing. Like at that time, snowboarders, the goal was to make your kicker, your lip into the rail, urban, as small as possible, because that's skateboarding. So it's like, how is a skateboarder ollieing up to a rail off concrete flat? And a snowboarder is like, well, fuck that. I should be able to do that too. I want to look like as rad as skating, because that's what snowboarding is emulating. So then skiing came along. It's like, now we're emulating snowboarding, which is emulating skateboarding. So we should be able to try to get that same thing. And people just kind of forgot now,
Yeah.
It's the same with like, you see this like new wave style skiing, and it's just like, yeah, it's dope. Like, it's dope style, but it's also kind of like, it's like wacky wavy arm guy from like the used car parking lot, like their arms are like all over the place. And that's not the like style at one point for a good 10 years was like keeping your arms down and still. Like think about how Henrik rides, how Tanner was, like how, that's, and it's fine. Like the style evolves. So like they're bringing this, like this new wave wacky arm guy into it, but they're also doing tricks that these other guys weren't doing. I think the best is when you see Phil Casabon and he's combining like insane balance, nose pressing, just like the sickest stalls and butters and shit. And then like, and combining that with like really calm style. Like Pollard would always talk about like calm, like hands down, like never, don't move your arms, don't move anything, just throw the trick. It looks so sick when you do that. So,
Yeah, that's exactly my thoughts of like, it can move as much as you want as long as it's below your waist. Like move your feet, but no opening windows.
I mean, you really look at those old movies, man, and you look at like Poor Boys Productions, and you'll see the two halves. You'll see the line team, and then you'll see the rest of the people, and it's and that's what made Pollard is that smoothness. But he's impressed as much as I am with the what these guys are doing today, whatever style they're doing it, and what I mean, it's all insane.
Yeah, well, in urban, there was definitely an evolution, as you said, where the first generation of urban skiers were really emulating skateboarding, and the point of and the skiing progression at that point didn't allow you to do that big of a trick, let's say. And then it got to a point, let's say, with the Tom Wallish era, where I think I got it right, is that he was at a level where he wanted to do, let's say, a 450 on, but then you can't do that with a 2-inch lip. So then
Right.
he was like, yeah, I need to compromise and big a bigger jump because I'm not going to do those tricks,
Yeah.
if it's small.
Yeah. I didn't think of it that way, but that is true, man. And I think in a lot of ways, skiing, surpassed snowboarding for quite a few years. I remember the transition of that where I'm in Burlington and snowboarding is it's just like insanely embedded in this community. And like, I knew what the guys at Burton were thinking and saying or whatever. And it's just like, first it was like, oh, look at those dorky guys trying to be like us on skis, then it was like, oh shit, dude, that guy just like destroyed us. Like that skier
Mm-hmm.
just did something that we still can't do on a snowboard. And that went on for a while, like the jealousy of that. And
Yeah.
then now we're in like the third phase where it's just like, hell yeah, like we're all doing this stuff. And you see people working together, between both sports.
That's really cool to see. And as you said, and as we talked at the beginning, snowboarding was really trendy. Like it was something in the 90s, and it stayed longer for the mainstream people that are that are not as core, let's say. That snowboarding was the trendy thing. And I wanted to talk to you about something is touring. Because
Yeah.
it seems like I'm a guy that I'm a course skier, but I'm also from Montreal, and I know a lot of people that ski once a year. And for a lot of them, they snowboard because that's what's cool, because they're still
Okay.
in that world. And what I noticed in the past couple of years is that people that ski once a year are now with touring setups. Like
Wow.
it's the new trendy thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of that is they don't want to spend $700 on a pass.
Mm,
I mean, the reality is so touring is great, but if you got a chairlift and you don't have, I mean, it just depends on who it is. You know what I mean? Like if you're really fit, then touring's like all good. You know what I mean? Because you're gonna just whip up the mountain and you're gonna get fresh tracks down, and it's great. But there's a lot of people that are like they're gonna buy the touring setup because they don't want to buy a pass. Well, I guarantee on their second day, you're gonna be like, fuck that. And they're gonna go buy a pass because you're just not gonna make it as a weekend warrior unless you happen to also stay in really good shape. So I think there's gonna be kind of like some products in the past were just like, of course it has a strong place, strong reason, people that love it. It's perfect for them, but it's gonna be a ton of product out there sitting in closets, never getting used. Like
mm.
there's just no way everyone buying it has what it takes to do that. It's so different than getting off a chair and just making your way down the hill.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're right, as a closet thing, because like personally I bought a touring kit because I'm going to the Chic Shocks this winter, but then I bought it because I know it's going to last a while, but how often am I going to use it? Not too sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if COVID closed the mountains, you'd be like, hell yeah. Right. Because you got no choice. It's all
Hmm.
a bonus. But if the mountain's open, the chairlift's spinning, you got to you need an hour just to get up the hill. Like think about time constraints too, like in your, especially, you got a family, you got a job, you got all this stuff going on. It's like, if you can bust over the hill for 2 hours, that's like, and get a lot of runs. If you go over the hill for 2 hours and you have to walk up the hill, you get one run.
Hmm. But that's something that I noticed with touring is kind of like people have skied the X mountain, some mountain for their whole life, and they're kind of fed up with the runs. They've done it, so
Yeah.
they're like, might as well just hike up and do it differently. And that's something that I've noticed with you. Like I've been following you for a while on social media, and it seems like you're still skiing as much as you can.
I'll
Like,
tell you something, dude. I, I mean, if you're in the ski business, it's a fact. You will ski the least of your entire life while you're in the ski business. And that's been true for me. I've been, for the last 25 years, man, all those pros that I was working with, I rarely ever skied with them and rarely got out and skied in my own backyard, in my own mountains. I mean, I might have put in, honestly, 20 days a year. That's pretty mellow for like
okay,
someone that's supposed to be all about their whole life is skiing. It's
yeah,
because you're so busy. You got to compress a year's worth of business and activities and everything that you have to do, develop into 6 months. You know, at least is the sales, the marketing, promotion. And during that time, you're developing new product for the next year. So you're just working like stupid amount. This year, I was just on a mission. I think COVID just reset my priorities, like just straight up. And I realized like, okay, I'm done. Like I am going to ski as much as my customers. That's my mission this year. And so far I probably already skied as much as I did last year, and it's been not good skiing, but I just was like, I got to get my ass out the door, because you can just stare at your screen, especially if you enjoy your job. You're sitting there, you're interacting, you're talking skiing, you're like scheming things up, you're getting creative, you're getting things, you know, like I wake up like excited to. So like this morning I went to Stowe. I was just like, I got up and I just got out the door before I got myself sucked in, you know, which happened the 3 prior days. I thought I was going to get out the door and I didn't.
Yeah, that's a great technique. Like
yeah, you have
the
to
day starts, you're just out.
As soon as you turn on that computer or even on the phone, like you just get sucked in. Oh, maybe it's right. I got to get back to that person. I want to see how those sales were. And oh, is that better or worse than last year? And it's like 2 hours later, you're like, oh fuck, it's too late, you know?
So what's your ski resort routine? Like, do you have a certain mountain that you go, or you drive around to many?
No, I just go local, just to Stowe and Bolton. I mean, with COVID, it's like there's nothing wrong with, you know, you should go local, ski locally. And I'm very lucky to have, you know, I ski locally where a lot of people want to be skiing in New England anyway. I mean, obviously, I'd rather ski out west, it's just better terrain and snow. But I love the quality of life and the culture and personality of the Northeast. And I grew up here, and so I just ski locally. Yeah, Bolton's like 25 minutes from my house. They got night skiing, smaller mountain, and then Stowe is a bigger mountain that's like 40 minutes from my house.
And now it's time for a second sponsor break. Axis Board Shop is a ski and snowboard shop based out of Saint-Sauveur, Quebec, Canada. They've been in business since 2002 and have supported skiing since day one. From sponsoring numerous athletes to putting on competitions to helping out movie productions, they've done it all. Axis is the core board shop, and they've got everything that you might need this season. Check them out at axisboutique.com or go check out their shop in Saint-Sauveur. Support companies that support skiing. Support Axis Board Shop. You mentioned skiing out west. That was something that I heard you on other platforms talk about, and I was curious. Maybe now's a good time to talk about that. You said that in between your college days and starting out line skis, you had that dream of going out west and just like, you know, the ski bum lifestyle.
Yeah.
Knowing what you know now, and maybe you've visited a bunch of places, like if you could pause your dad life and business life and do 1 year, like where would you go?
Well, I would love to go to a lot of places, because all the places I did for business were the same places every year. It was like Keystone for the trade demo. It was like Mount Hood for summer testing. It was, you know, when I was doing the team shoots, it was Squaw or, you know, Copper or wherever. But I mean, if it was one place, I really do enjoy like Squaw. Like Tahoe is awesome. It's very like Burlington and like the mentality of the area, but train is, it's just awesome. I also love, you know, to get to bottom of the hill and it's like warm-ish. It's like insane. Yeah, so I like that if it was one place, but I have so many places I haven't gone. Like you think someone that's been in this business, like I said, I've been in the business so long that I haven't skied much. That's the problem. And so now I'm gonna, you know, when you can travel again, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've kind of had the same things. Like I used to make ski movies, and that was the thing. We would love doing park, but then at that point, urban was so important in ski movies that we would end up doing the whole winter in the streets and not even spending a day in the park. So
Right.
it's a hard balance to get, I guess. Like
You're working at it, dude. You're working. You know what I mean? You turned your hobby into a job. Like it's like if you really love skiing, don't work in the ski business. Work in a summer business. Work in the golf business, so that all winter you can go skiing. You know, or at least be mellower. You know, that's it. It really makes sense. It's just not something you realize when you're getting into it. And I'm not saying it's not worth getting into it because of that. It's just the way, you know, you gotta put a lot more effort into doing it. And I think it was my business. So I was responsible to the, and I was just like a kid and figuring it out. And I was like, I mean, shit, dude, like I was always stressing about money, and it was like it felt like you were always starving. Like for 20 years felt like I've just barely kept my head above water to breathe. You know what I mean? Even when it looked like we were doing great, it's just, you only got 5 months to pull it off, and then you got to wait for the next chance to pull it off. Now the business model I got is very stable, and we're solid, and I'm enjoying it more, and that's why I want to go skiing more. But like all of that time, it wasn't just that I'm in the ski business. It was also like I was like just on a mission to survive.
And it took 20 years to get there.
I mean, it took a good, yeah. I mean, yeah, it did. I don't want to admit it. But no, I mean, I got there in some ways. Like I had a good job. I was working for K2 after I sold line to K2, and I was like, hey, I got a salary. Like these guys got everything on lock, and I'm just figuring out what skis to make and the marketing and stuff. And it was a really good balance there. But then when I went back, when you're on your own, that's when it's just gnarly.
And that's kind of the ultimate entrepreneurial move. Like, I think I've already heard that in the show like Shark Tank. I don't know if you know that show.
I love Shark Tank. Yeah.
Something like that, or maybe the Canadian equivalent, but where they said a real entrepreneur is not someone who builds one business and sells it. He's someone who builds one business, sells it, and then starts another one.
Yeah, my wife would agree that that's not a good thing, actually.
Yeah, because you kind of took a big risk. Like you built line, you sold it, and like you said, you had a salary and kind of a stable lifestyle, I guess. And then you kind of dumped that all the way to the kind of a big risk of founding a new business.
Yeah. So when line from, just for people who don't know, it's from 95 when I started it to 99, I was building my own ski boards. We were building up to 4,000 pair a year in like a 2,000, 3,000 square foot garage with a bunch of my friends from high school. And like we had a business, but we never made money. We were losing stupid amount of money. And then in 99, I was like, I got to either go bankrupt or find someone to invest in it. So I found an investor. That was Carhu. They made cross-country skis, and they made Burton snowboards up in in Cowansville, Quebec. So they started making my skis, and that got all the manufacturing off my plate. I was like, I can breathe. I can just focus on sales and marketing. And we did really good. And that's when we progressed from 2000 to 2006 about the long skis. That's when like all the long twin tip, all the regular twin tip skis went off, and we were right there. But we still, even with Carhu as a partner, they knew business. We just couldn't get enough people to buy them because it was still a weird thing. I mean, you look back and you're like, hell yeah, like the 1080 and the Canadian Air Force and like all this stuff and Armada and whatever, but like not a lot of people were buying them. It was like the most popular, coolest, raddest, most talked about thing that barely anyone bought.
Yeah, there's a difference between what's cool and what's lucrative.
Yeah. So then we ran out of money again in 2006, and that's when K2 bought the business entirely. At that point, then I didn't own it, and they didn't pay me for it. They paid off our debt. So no one made money off it. This is kind of like the second time. But I got a good paying job, and I had a kid at the time, and I was like, this is stability I need. And I stayed in Burlington, just worked from my guest room in my house to run line. The first day I got there, the president of K2, Robert Markovich, pulled me in a room with his engineer, and they pulled out the Rakeley Flex-On boot, just a black boot. And they're like, hey, this boot? I was like, oh yeah, I skied that for years, love it. Like, hey, we want to bring that back to market. But no one in this building at K2 wants to do it. They refuse to sell this because they say it's an old boot that no one wants. And they want to make a new K2 boot. So what we want to do, what we're offering is you the opportunity to, I don't know if it's an opportunity or like, punishment, but like the opportunity to bring this to market. And so they
challenge at least.
Yeah. And they said, hey, we have the brand name that used to be a wakeboard company called Full Tilt. And we got this boot mold that we bought for nothing from Europe. We found on the shelf that we know people love. It's kind of like the Look Pivot binding. It's a 30-year-old product that people still it's unique enough where they love it, right?
But why wasn't it sold anymore? Do you
Yeah.
know the reason
So
why?
right. So then the full tilt boot was like, they were like, but you can't, you have no budget you have no additional budget or people or resources. So you have to use everything from line. So we had the same reps. I had like, it's just like, and I was hyped on it because I was like, I want to show that I can do something other than the brand I started. And so like, that was my job, is to bring it back to market. And they were like, if eventually you sell 30,000 pair, we will have learned enough about boot manufacturing, being in the boot business, that we will at that time bring back the K2 boot. We will create the K2 boot. I mean, so they did, like, you remember, like full tilt went off, it grew, and then they made a K2 boot. But anyway, like getting back to your original question of leaving, in 2013, so from 06 to 13, I worked for K2 running line and full tilt. I was just like, what is my future? You know what I mean? Like, I'm a dude working remotely, which at the time no one was doing. I'm like, I did everything I wanted to do with line. Like I took it beyond where I imagined it would even go. And it wasn't really going to have anywhere else to go. And it was it's a big company with like, things have to be done a certain way. There's not a lot of flexibility, and the world around us was changing dramatically with websites and e-commerce. And I was looking around just being like, dude, I think I could just do this. Like, this is where it's going. Like, I think if I sold direct and did this and did that and did it all digital and didn't sell to shops, blah, blah, like I could pull this off. It's like, what other future I really have here? I have ideas I can't even do at Line because they're too big of a company to do these creative ideas. And that's when I said, okay, it's worth it. And I jumped ship, and I thought about it for honestly like 5 years, like just couldn't stop thinking about it. So once I did it, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And it was like, we had people were buying on, the thing that was different, people were buying online. They never were before. They were like, I was able to market for nothing, for social media. Didn't exist before that. Email marketing, just communicate with thousands of customers that were previously never been possible by phone and whatever else was available. So, and do limited edition skis that you couldn't do in a big company, and just all that kind of stuff.
So it seems like it has something to do with the structure. Like, I don't know, how many employees were you at Line when you were bought by K2?
Well, it's actually always been about the same. And honestly, even today, Line is like, you wouldn't believe how few people work there.
Well, my question is like, how many were you at Line, and then how many were you at K2 as a business?
I think it was like, it was a little. I mean, this is who worked there then when I was with myself and K2, and after today. There's someone that runs the brand. There's a marketing person. There's a graphic designer. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much your team, and then engineering is like as you need it. If you need a web developer, it's as you need it. There's literally like 3 people.
When you talk about the big structure, like K2 actually. Sports.
Yeah.
K2 Sports as a business, when you say it was harder to make creative decisions since it was a bigger business, like how many are there at K2 Sports? Is it like 100? 100, 1,000?
No, like 100 maybe, something. Okay. 100, couple 100 maybe. I mean, you're talking about 10 brands. I mean, they had 3 full-time lawyers, to give you some perspective.
Yeah. So you went from Line being like 3 people, 4 people to...
Yeah, totally, dude. It was just a few people for sure. Yeah.
To 100, and then you add kind of your need to go back to doing stuff in a small team scale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I didn't have to worry about money when I was at K2. Not that they give you a lot of money, but I didn't have to write a check. I didn't even know the bank account number. You know what I mean? There was a financial department. You know what I mean? There's like an accounting department and a legal department and a engineering department. And and it's smart because those same people are doing work for 15 brands. So there's like economies of scale, that's cheaper for each brand if they share resources like that.
Yeah. And now it's time for another sponsor break. J Skis is a company based out of Burlington, Vermont. Their business model of making limited edition graphic skis that are sold online directly to consumer is super dope. As a fan of original graphics, I love it. They put a lot of effort into making great skis, but also in making them look super good. This season, I'll be skiing on the vacation ski, and I can't wait for some snowstorm to go and try them out in some POW. Support companies that support skiing. Support J Skis. So you founded J skis in 2013.
Yeah.
It's going to be 8 years this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've had relatively you're a small ski business in this world of like big brands, but you've had a lot of success. That's one thing that I wanted to ask you, because we see a lot of businesses come and go that produce skis.
Yeah.
That show up, and then a couple of years down the road, it didn't work out. What do you think got Jay to flourish and to stay like? I think there's a stats. I don't know if it's worldwide, but I've heard that in Canada where most businesses close down by 7 years. And if you pass the 7 year mark, then you're probably like gonna last for a while.
Yeah.
You know.
I thought it was 3 years in business. Usually they say like literally like if you can survive like well, they put it this way, your third year you have to hit break even, or your fourth year. Like you can't really, you'd need a lot of investment. People willing to give you money without thinking they're going to get it back to be in like year 4, 5, 6, 7 and still not be making money. I mean, that's only like digital BS, platforms. Oh yeah, someday we're worth $1 billion and sell it. We're going to lose $5 million every year until then, or more probably.
But yeah, there's been corrupt that went away. There's been revision. There's been ramp, and there's also a lot of competition brewing into smaller companies. Like just in the last year or two, there's been Wander Alpine. There's been Season that came up.
Yep,
it's a tough business to be in.
Dude, it's insanely tough. Here's just a fact. Like if you sell 100% direct, which is the most profitable way to operate, not selling to a third party that then sells it to the consumer, no middlemen, just direct to the consumer, you have to sell 2,800 pair. If your average selling price is like, let's say your skis are priced at $600 to $700, but you probably sell on average for like 550 or $600 at the end of the year. You have to sell 2,800 pair to just break even. That's without a pro team. That's a lean operation. That's not a factory. That's outsourced. That's like you pay a factory to build your skis for you, because a factory would cost you $1 million. What are you going to build a factory for? You haven't even sold 100 skis. So you have to get it so lean, and you have to get up to a volume. It's hard to sell 3,000 skis. It took me, with all my following and hundreds of thousands of people that owned my line skis and loved it and knew who I was and believed in it. It was hard to sell 300 pair the first year. It was hard to get up to that 3,000 pair in the first 3 to 4 years. And we just barely did it. So we survived. But otherwise you need a shit ton of money. I'm talking like millions to just like blow it. And that's where you see these brands on year 5 where they just go, okay, we're done, because those investors put so much into it, never made $1. And they get to the point where it's literally bleeding every day. They lose money and there's no hope in sight. And they just say like, we're done, or they try to sell it and no one will buy it because it's not making any money.
How did you make it happen with J Skis? Because you really built a brand of the people, I would say, where it's not that you, how do I say it? It's not that you signed Tom Wallish and then like you had the best pro repping it. It was really like something of a friendly vibe in the brand that people really associated with. And it seemed like from day one, people were attached to the brand. How did you make that happen?
Dude, thank you so much for recognizing that. It's
awesome. Really something I noticed.
Thanks. Like that was a big, like when I started it, I often set my sights on doing everything the opposite. Like if you just don't do what everyone else is doing, you'll likely come up, and you need to succeed. You're kind of guaranteed to come up with something very original that works. Like I need it to work, but I can't be like everyone else, because then it's like you need to create your own playing field. Like what Phil Casabon does is he creates his own playing field. You know what I mean? Like Tanner Hall, it's like his own playing field. Like he's like creating for so many years his own movies, his own videos. Like, like Pollard, same thing. Like if you think that you're going to win or you're going to get somewhere by doing the same thing as someone else, you're kidding yourself. You're going to burn. So if you're an athlete, you're just going to, you're gonna bang your head against the wall because you're just copying. You're never getting ahead. If you're a company, your customers are gonna have no reason to buy from you any more than someone else. So as a business, if I went the way of pros like everyone else, I'd have to outspend them. I'd have to somehow spend more money than these other big companies to have better pros. If I was going by ads that you see in a magazine, I have to spend more money than them. If, just and any way you go about it, it just makes more sense for me if you're creative enough to just create your own way, corner yourself, put yourself in a position where you're not allowed to do it. And so I was like, and I worked with I worked with Wallace. I worked with all these guys. Like, I know that game. I know what that takes. I know the risks, the costs, all that shit. I've sold the shops all around the world, and I know what that takes, and all the cost and the time and the risk and the battle that you have going head to head with Rozzy in a ski shop. Like, to me, I'm like, I will not be able to outsell Rozzy, even if I have a better ski at a better price. I just can't. The shop won't allow that. So
yeah, and they have a brand that they've built for 100 years, so it's so hard.
the shops are in bed. I mean, they're just one and the same with the brand. Like, they're just not going to I'm not going to sell 100 Rozzies. I'm going to put 100 of these J skis in instead. Like, it just doesn't happen. So he's like, once I add it all up, I go, here's what's going to differentiate us. We're going to promote. I mean, modern times, people want real life. They don't want an ad. They want a real person that is doing real skiing like they do, they can relate to. So like the everyday skier that is my customer, that's my team. I was like, I can, through social media, promote my own customers, and they're going to feel so stoked that they feel part of it, and I didn't want to be too cool for school. That was, like, in my opinion, what our motto was. Like, if you're not as cool as us, then you probably shouldn't be riding this. Like, that's not everyone sees it that way, but that's a style. That's a brand position that skateboarding has a lot. Like, if you're not what skateboarding is representing, then you're not cool enough for skateboarding, and that's fine. It works. You know what I mean? And then there are brands that say, like, you got to be the best skier in the world to associate with us. And it's just like, so I was trying to be all inclusive because this is an extension of my personality. And I like, honestly, like it's just skiing. Like, I catch myself saying that all day long. It is. It's just fucking skiing, dude. Like it's not just about like winning some competition or some race or some this. It's not about who's the best and whatever. It's like fun to progress. It's fun to try shit and to do the best, but it's not what it's about. It's just about having fun. Like, I never, other than that early X Games, I never raced. I never competed in anything else. I'm not that kind of competitive. I'm, where like you have to win to be cool or anything like that. So it's like, it's just skiing. Like, let's just go have fun, man. And then I was like, no other brand could do limited edition runs. Like, they can't build only 200 of a graphic. Like, they're too big of an operation. So I did that. I hand signed them and numbered each ski, like artwork. I always, back in the line day, if you remember the early line skis, like, art was insane, and that was important. And it was important to the industry before recent times. Now a lot of them are just black skis. And the thing is, selling to retailers, like, I already played that game, man. Like, I couldn't make money selling to retailers to stay in business. So it's like, yeah, I like retailers. I want to support them, but like, they need to do that through these other brands. Cause like, I can't afford to finance these guys, It's like, I got to get paid today. Like, when a consumer buys them, I need that money so I can pay the factory that just built it,
So it's all like things that come from either needs or from your personality, but that gave a good strategy for the business. Like, saying that you needed the money now made you do direct to consumer, which ended up being a super good strategy. And then you being an inclusive guy made the brand super inclusive, which probably helped a lot. Because what I noticed for a lot of startup brands in skiing is that they go really core, but then they forget the business aspect. Is that, well, if you're going only for 1% of the people you could sell to, then you're making life harder on yourself.
Yeah, you ain't going to hit the number that you need to stay around. I mean, that's an unfortunate, but we can still make core stuff. We make skis that, like Sam's in X Games Real Street and killing it, on our skis. And that same ski Could be sold to a mom. I don't, could be sold to a beginner, could be sold to like an expert that is never going to be in the park, or someone that only is in the park. Like, yeah, it's like, it's all good for everyone, you know? And I think that a lot of what makes this possible is just the time period with digital
Yeah.
marketing and communication. I mean, we're communicating with, you know, we sold over 4,000 skis this year. We're communicating with 4,000 skiers, like
Hmm.
literally one-on-one, by email, by live chat. That was never possible. Like, you try to call one of these big companies, call them and just say, I got a question about a ski. You
Yeah.
can't.
Forget about that.
Yeah. So it was an opportunity to do something that wasn't being done. And at the end of the
Hmm.
day, like, that is what entrepreneurial opportunities are, doing something that hasn't been done before. And it was it wasn't possible 10 years ago, you know, 15 years ago. And that's why I didn't do it.
One thing that I have to admit I was skeptical when you launched J Skis was
Sure. Hey, dude,
the
I was too. But you gotta drop in, man. You gotta hit that jump. Even if
yeah,
you're not, you don't land it.
you're right. Was the aspect of the limited editions.
Yeah.
It was so strange that, not that I thought it was a bad idea, not at all. It was just, is that going to work? Is it going to, business wise? And it's a good day to have this chat because you just launched a special edition
Oh
today
yeah.
of a
The
hundred pairs
dinosaur
of,
junior. Yeah.
yeah. And from what I'm seeing, you're going to sell it all out in a day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
definitely working out.
Yeah, this is like a lot of years and evolution of how to go about presenting it. And I mean, we put a ton of time collaborating with artists, and you know, this Dinosaur Jr. Jay Masix he's a, you know, he's a legend in all the skateboard videos from back in the day, like his music. So it's a very core, but it's also kind of old school. Not everyone today knows of it. But we worked really hard to like do it right. You know, like we spent a lot of hours. Like, sometimes people will see our skis. There are some people that might say, oh, well, whatever, he just put like a picture of a mountain on a ski. It's like, we actually like talked for days and days with the artist and tried different things and variations. And there's a story. We try to have a story behind each ski, like, not just because, but it's just like, why wouldn't you want a cool, deep story behind the graphic that you're riding? And why wouldn't you
Hmm.
want a graphic on your ski? You know, and it's like, people should want to hang them up on their wall as much as they want, enjoy that as much as riding them. And because we can, so like, why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Um, I'll tell you something though, you can't do that if you sell ski shops, because they need the ski to be as broad as possible. So
Yeah.
what will happen is they might buy two or three of them, but you'll never get up to the volume you need making cool graphics in a ski shop. They
Yeah.
won't
And
accept.
that's something that's been more and more a trend in the past couple of years, where big brands have just kind of blank skis. There's a collar and there's the name of the brand, and that's it.
Yeah, and it's because the ski shops won't buy it. Honestly, like, not won't buy enough of it. Because if you see a ski in a shop and it's black and it has a logo, there's nothing to not like, but there's certainly nothing to question, right? Like, you got
Hmm.
Dinosaur Junior ski with this funky character on the tail, and it says, like, you know, like, just, you know, we do collabs with like Pit Viper and, you know, all these, you know, crazy huge sayings on the base. Like, a shot's to be like, ooh, I don't know, man. Like, what if, I don't know if I could sell that to like a middle
Hmm.
age, whatever, you know, but there's enough people out there that'll buy it directly from us. You know, the
Yeah.
challenge of a shop is they're only selling to that town unless they're online. And how many people in that town have that attitude? Well, I'm selling to the entire world. You know, we sell about 75% in the US, 15 to 20% in Canada, and then the rest of the world. So we don't need everyone to love our skis. We don't intend for everyone to love them, but there's enough people out there that, instead of them kind of like, okay, whatever, I bought a ski, it's supposed to be good, they're going to be like, I love that graphic, you know, and it's a
Hmm.
good ski. So
Yeah.
that's
With
the
your
angle.
model, you can really test out what people want, because there's always the double-edged sword of retail, where maybe the store manager doesn't think a funky design would work, whereas he's not the customer, he's not the one buying it, and
You're right.
it's yeah.
That he doesn't have enough people. Like he might have 3 people. Like, which size are you going to buy? Which size is that? It's challenging period when now with COVID, we fast forwarded like 5 years of evolution and how people purchase product, right? So it's tough when you're only selling to that one town,
Mm-hmm. As you said, there's been a lot of evolution within skiing. Like you said with ski boards, it evolved into twin tips.
Yeah.
And we've seen an evolution, like Salomon per se, were really involved into the park scene and branched off into backcountry stuff. There's been something kind of special I noticed in the past couple of years where Armada and Line, who were really the core park freestyle brands, started making carving skis.
Oh, I know.
Where do you see like the future of this going, where with core brands and people kind of moving away from, from the freestyle scene?
Yeah, well, so the fact is, it's just all in the numbers. And the challenge, once you're owned by a big company, is they have to grow. There's no option to not grow. Like Armada has to grow, Line has to grow. And like to grow, you have to eventually make sacrifices in a market where you've already maxed out your core customer base. You have to now broaden your appeal to a more mainstream person. And if you're not a mainstream brand, well, guess what? You're going mainstream now because we got to sell more. And it's because they're public companies, so the stock shareholders, all the money comes out of the company every year. It goes to Wall Street and the investors are like, look, I made 10% return. Well, the people suffering is the ski business because that money, if it was if it was a private business owned by, not that skiers don't work there. They do. Everyone's a skier. It's great, but it's not owned by them. If it was, all that profit, instead of going to Wall Street, would be put back into the business, investing in developing product, athletes, promotion. And that's why it's very difficult for the film companies, the magazines, any of the media companies, events. You barely see events. Forget COVID. You still didn't see events, consumer events. Like those businesses are looking at only what the profit is, and they want more profit. And there's only 2 ways to do it: sell more skis to more mainstream people, whether they fit the Line attitude or Armada attitude or not, or spend less. And they're doing both. So that's where you'll see it. Okay. Now, that's part of why I left, because I knew that was I was experiencing that. And I'm now in a spot where we're self-sustainable, like we can pay our bills, like, we everything's covered and we have a good time doing it, and we can invest back into the sport. It's not easy and it's not a sure thing, and it takes many years, but I'm just happy that I was able to pull it off. It's kind of like my best trick, Yeah.
Talking about companies evolving, you're in year 8 of J. You said you're doing better than ever this year. Like it's growing each year.
Yeah.
What are your plans for the future for J?
Well, I want to be able to ski more. That's like that's one of it, but I don't have any heavy plans like we're going to take over this, that, and the other thing. I just want to be able to focus on getting maybe a little more innovative in the product, making some more fun stuff, just because we can, maybe doing some things just because we actually can, and we're not in survival mode, even though we're busy as all hell in the winter. So, that's the beauty, is like, we just do whatever we feel like makes sense when we get there. Like, we're super real time. Like we say, thinking at the speed of thought, or like moving at the speed of thought. Like we really do. Like we'll just on a random Wednesday just be like, hey, why don't we just do this? And they're like, okay, let's do it. Like, there's no like layers of approvals and, we're not planning years in advance like everyone else, because we don't have to. We can just kind of, and we work with the factory Utopia up in Rimouski that builds our skis. They're 8 hours from us, the closest factory you can drive to. But, they speak, we speak the same language in terms of like on the same mission, and the flexibility. Like these big factories are building, 300,000 pair a year, you have to commit to what you're making over a year in advance. So like by the time it gets in the consumer's hands, the skier, they have product that was developed years ago,
Yeah.
committed to a year ago. They finally get it. By the time they get it, it's almost old news. Where we're developing it, like in what we develop today, you'll be riding 7 months from now.
Mhm.
So you can move a lot faster and react quicker
So
to
is
what's
that kind
happening.
of your is that kind of your schedule? Not your schedule. Is that kind of your turnaround time, 7 months of saying from the moment you have an idea until it's on market, it's kind of around 6, 7 months?
Yeah, it actually is because we finished developing the product in like February, March, whenever the snow melts, and we deliver it to people in August. So like that's insane. It just in
Hmm.
this, I mean, same with shoes, same with bikes, same with anything that's going through retail. Like just to take a step back, like if you're buying it this winter, it was sold to the store last winter. That means it was developed the winter before. So, and so that's 2 years ago instead of like 6 months ago. So we can react and be like, hey, you know what? Like people were saying this and we're seeing that. Let's make that. Um, and it's fun that way. And you don't get too caught up in, you just, you're doing, it's just like learning a trick, you're adjusting real time to everything.
So now I'll ask you some questions that people had for you on Instagram.
All right.
First off, from Petrich or Cologne, worst trend in skiing.
Worst trend in skiing, man. I usually have a lot of things to complain about. Uh, I'll go easy on everyone by just saying, let's see. I guess you could say just like really lame graphics. Like everything just looks like a prototype to me, man. I understand why, but it's like, let's go back, go back to the early 2000s. There was like K2 was having insane graphics. I mean, some of those mainstream brands, they were doing it, Line, Armada, like everyone just went so soft lately. It's just boring.
Laura Gogo asks, what made you want to approach a tattoo artist for a collab?
Because they're an artist and the artwork looked really cool. Simple as that.
Did you know him or
No,
how
I
did you
you
find
just
him?
find people online, just search through social or websites, and just one thing leads to another. And, we're looking at hundreds and hundreds of them, and then we figure out the best that we
That's
think
so
would be a good
cool.
fit. Yeah. Sometimes it's art that they already did. And we just say, hey, you already did this. This is, we mock it up on a ski. We're like, dude, this is perfect. And then they're like, okay, here's the art. And then other times we're like, hey, we want to like do this type of layout and do it from scratch.
Antoine Deuce asks, what's the process for an artist to collab with the brand?
Well, we either we see their existing art and we either say we want to literally use it or we want a version of something like this, but with this content. We help work together to lay out like what it, where it's positioned on the ski, the scale of it, the content of it, the color. And then they work on it or they give us the art if it's already done. Then we have an in-house graphic designer, Fank. This guy's a legend, been in business as long as me. He was like driving ride snowboards through their heyday. Super creative. And he takes their art and manipulates it to fit it best on a ski. And we go back and forth and back and forth, like me and Fank and Taylor, who runs marketing with me. Everyone in house, we just tweak it and see variations. Sometimes I put it on social media, like, hey, which of these three versions do you like? Or which of these two pieces of art do you like better? We get final approval of the artist and then we hand it to a factory. They build, a proto of the print and work it through to it's dialed. It's a lot actually more than you think. I understand why companies aren't all doing that.
Yeah, it's a great marketing tool to have many choices of design, but from a business perspective, it's a lot of more of work that you give yourself
Well,
of
that's the thing.
producing.
Like we don't all the things that we're not doing, we're doing this. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't be like, I'm going to do everything that every other brand's doing, plus do everything that they're not doing. Like you kind of got to give something up so you can focus, and take it like further. If I was distracted at trade shows, if I was chasing, managing sales reps to sell to stores and go to distributors and all this stuff, like that would suck up so much time and money. where instead we're like, what you're saying, that's what we're doing, figuring out what graphics.
SLM Hanlon asks, who was the biggest diva you've ever had on one of your teams?
Diva. So is diva like someone that thinks that give me the diva. What do you?
I guess my definition of diva would be something hard to work with, maybe.
Yeah, like they think like I'm above this. I'm going to tell you that, and Scogan is a coach of the Olympic team in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
I love Scogan, but he had some years there where, man, he was so, and this is what happens, he was so burned out from being on the road, competing in every possible big air, slope style, rail jam, going to every photo shoot, every video shoot, that by the time I asked him, hey, can you come to like our team shoot so we have a couple of our own photos? He was over it. He was just complaining and didn't want to go up the hill. Oh, it's a cloudy day. Didn't get out of bed to do it. It was a bitch, but like, I understand why. It's like a celebrity. I mean, he was the best. Like no one could beat him. He had a Switch Rodeo 5. I know it sounds pretty straightforward, but he was just, no one could do it. Eventually Mike Douglas was like trained in the summer to beat him, literally. And they went to like this event in the summer in Denver. And I think he threw, I don't know what came of it, but there was a while where like no one could beat Scogan. And what's unfortunate is X Games had had a shoot because he was winning X Games too. And they did a shoot at his house and he was on his dirt bike and hit jumps and he slid out and just like hurt his leg. And they didn't know that it actually messed up, like a vein wasn't bringing blood to his lower leg. And he like lost his muscle. And that's why he couldn't compete anymore. It's a good lesson that if you fall hard enough where you're like, wow, I really messed myself up, but you can then still walk, it's worth just going and seeing a doctor. This was a weird one. Pollard had something similar to that too that threw him off. But yeah, Scogan's the man. But yeah, he was a bitch for a while there when I asked him to do stuff for us. Burned out.
Yeah, that's the bad side of like sometimes skiing too much, is that you lose sight of just enjoying every day. And
totally, he was just being asked to like do this interview, do this autograph signing, go to this movie premiere, go to this rail jam, go to this kind of, stop this jump for this shoot, for this photo, for this video, for this trade show. Is like the time I would be the last guy. I'd be in March, like, oh yeah, we got to do a team shoot.
Mm-hmm. So last questions from people on Instagram. It's off topic, but let's go for it. Jamel 207 asks, favorite Vermont cheese?
Cheddar, of course. It's just not even a question. If you live here, it's like the state cheese, man. Cabot, all the way. Sharp cheddar, extra sharp cheddar.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, Jason. Really appreciate it.
Hey, it's been amazing, man. You took me down some roads I haven't thought about or talked about in forever. So thanks for this.
So this is it for episode 6. Shout out to Access Board Shop, J Skis, and Treefort Lifestyle for supporting the podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and on your favorite podcast platform. Peace.